You know I love to analyze and figure out music on this channel, but it's rare that we get to actually hear from the composer themselves about both the creative and technical processes that went into creating their music. Today, Jacob Degraff, who won first prize in our July composing competition, is generously sharing with us an inside look at his winning track. I also had a chance to talk to Jacob in depth about his process, which we'll put in a separate video. So if you're subscribed, you'll know when that comes out, as well as the announcement for our October competition at the end of this month. All right, I'll let Jacob take it from here.
Hello, my name is Jacob de Graaf. I am a composer from Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and today we're going to walk through my winning score of the Ryan Leach July competition. So let's dive right in. I'm going to get my headphones and we'll have a look at the individual layers and things. So this piece was inspired by this picture here, which is a great illustration, and for me it was really the homecoming of a hero. So I wanted to have a very folky sort of feeling towards it. Very kind of simple melodies that had this Celtic vibe to it. And I really wanted there to be a play between a very pastoral woodwindy theme and a sort of more like the galloping feel of this rider. So for the rider, I sort of had in mind the violin as a solo melody instrument, and the village and the sort of the rural aspect is sort of depicted by the recorder. Now, I picked the recorder quite consciously because when I was starting to mix things in the early stages of composing, I noticed that the flute, which is a great instrument, but it's quite sharp and quite piercing, has a beautiful crystalline feeling, which you should be using quite consciously, of course, when you write classical music. With the piece that I had in mind, I had much more of an earthy, down-to-earth wooden feeling with this image. And I really thought that the flute had way too much purity and perfection in its sound, so I went for recorders, which are played by my friend Caroline Lavelle in my composition. The violin is beautifully played by Radi Chavali from Tunisia. He's an excellent violin player, and both Caroline and Radi have become good friends of mine over the years, and it's just really a privilege to be able to work with such fantastic and talented people. I'll ask Ryan as well if he can put some links to those two people in the description below so you can check out their work. But let's dive right in. So I started the piece by having basically, I really wanted something that was purely string based to open the piece, but really setting the vibe and the rhythm. So the rhythm was very important for me. So let's have a look at the first. With a little bell hit there, because it's still, I wanted that sort of to bring in the rural landscape. It's always tricky to use little sounds and things because it can sound gimmicky, but I felt that it was still such an integral part of the composition that it worked for me in this bit. Let's have a look at the rhythm of the strings here. Actually, I'll up this a bit. Now you will notice some grayed out notes here that I have muted. When I write, I like to mute notes that when I change my mind about a section, because sometimes when you go back again, you discover that what you had initially written was actually better, and instead of having to kind of remember what you did, just mute or unmute pieces. With this one, I really wanted to have that first oomph on the first of the bar and not on the second, because I think it gives that lightness towards the second half. And of course the cello is doing exactly the same as the bass, just an octave lower here, so it's it works nicely. The original violins that I had sounded like this. and I could have spent much more time sort of making them sound really good, but I kind of liked the idea of having real performers playing it. But the solo violin is the Joshua Bell Embertone one, which is an amazing instrument. It's fantastic to get, especially your first thoughts down. It's very intuitive. It has a beautiful performance character as a solo instrument. It's one of my favorite solo violins to use in compositions, and yeah, it's very playable straight out of the box. But there's nothing quite like the real thing, which I'll play now. I'll mute these again, and then we can hear Rati's performance here. And what I did as well, I had basically the first bit purely in octaves, but then it breaks up and something is repeated from a bar before in the second violin. To really sort of play with that playful element. Then that's just the intro, and then we move to the actual first section, which is B1 and B2. I like to name my sections really individually, because it keeps clarity for when you look at your full score, and you get an idea as well. So B1 and B2, they are related, but they're slightly different. And then here we have C1, and a variation of C1 is C2. And then we have the B3, which is basically again a variation of the B theme, a brand new D theme here. Finally the C theme comes back, and it ends on the last few notes of the C theme as well. So here we add some woodwinds, which I will isolate quickly here so you can have a look at those. So we're going to play first the sections with the purely, I'll just, because I muted those, I'll delete those. This is the woodwinds for the whole B section. And as you can see, there's a nice run up towards the new section there. So it's basically very simple notes here, again, just purely supporting the main melody. We see that in the strings here as well, if I just solo them for a second and highlight them so we can see what they are doing in this section. And then it sort of supports purely the melody that we have in the new section. Slight key change there, just sort of to fall into something new, like a little unexpected moment here. And for me, I wanted to have super simple percussion, which is in this section introduced, and I felt that it was more like basically people still working in a village, the people beating their anvils and sort of just doing stuff. So it's very basic drums, and then the second bit in the C2 section, the drums become a little bit more complicated, but it's still all getting that rhythm out there. So there's lots of instruments like little anvils, little other metal bits that are sort of hit. And what I do as well, if you magnify these bits, you can see that these don't line up perfectly, because you want that human touch there. Not every hit will sound exactly the same loudness, but also the playing will be slightly off, which gives it again that beautiful human touch. And then when we play the whole C section, which is a very unfortunate name here, in one go, it sounds like And for me, I had this, like, the villagers are sort of seeing this rider coming into their village. There is this moment of, oh, the hero has returned. And then people ask a question like, what's happened here? So this is like this moment that a question is asked. Sort of, what has happened here? And like questions in big groups happen, one person asks the question and then the full string section, sort of some of the violins repeat what the recorder was asking. But of course the hero has beaten the dragon or done something heroic. So the piece continues again with the more triumphant B section. And then D is a completely new section, which again, like the C bit here, it changed key a little bit, just purely to sort of give it a slight different feel again. Now, what I also did was, like, when these questions came in towards the end, I wanted to introduce very subtly the brass, so the brass does not suddenly feel like it has no place to be there. But I'll just play, it's just French horns and a tuba and trombone. It's not a huge brass section at all, but it's these instruments here. I'll just up this so we can see what they're doing. And you can see that sort of this gives a little bit of triumph to this B section here. And a lot of the music has rises, so there's a lot of the time the melody goes upwards towards a new section, which it is a feeling of, it's very simple, these things, it just gives a feeling of joy and hopefulness and instead of lines that go down, they sound much more mournful and they can sound much more sad. So then we come to this new section here, and the B section still had percussion, even bigger than the first time it came around, but then suddenly I wanted this brief sort of, like, just sort of acoustic strings without any percussion underneath it. So it's just that little moment there with the recorder again, nice and woody and earthy, giving the air of the landscape and bringing that back into the village landscape. And then we end the piece by the C area here again, the C section coming back from C1, C2, but this time with much more strings. There's brass, there is even a harp, very, very subtle. A lot of the times when you have a harp in a composition, in an orchestra, because the harp is not like the trumpet blowing over the whole full orchestra, the harp is always sitting really softly in the back. But if you don't have the harp, a lot of the times you do feel that you're missing something. So I really wanted to have harp, there is some celeste, and then there is the tubular bells as well, which proper appears through at the end of the piece. But let's just have a listen to the tubular bells, sorry, the tubular bells, the celeste and the harp here. It's very simple there, but it just adds that little bit of flavor towards the whole composition. And this is what the last section sounds. You can hear that suddenly the full orchestra joins. So there's the brass and the strings, the woodwinds, everyone is joining in the celebration. And of course the last word is for the triumphant rider, the violin doing its last melody bit. Again, to just emphasize how beautiful it is to have a real performer perform this bit. When you hear the last few bars, you can hear that the bow is not an infinitely long thing. So you need to have this long note at the end, then he has to bow it up and down. And you can hear that. And then towards the very end, there's this beautiful bit where there's this little bit of a triumphant, loud bit. It's not like sort of fading out. It's like a proper last bit. So let's hear that. I hope you have enjoyed this breakdown of my piece, The Journey Home. I want to say thank you to Ryan for letting me show my music on his channel, and thank you for watching all, and perhaps I will see you on my YouTube channel, which is A Darker Flame. Link will be below in the drop down as well. For now, thank you for watching, and perhaps I'll see you again. Goodbye.